Welcome to our STEAM career exploration event.
Hello, everyone. My name is Quinn Franklin. I'm a construction worker who works for Walsh Construction. I'm a construction manager. Okay. All of you are from Chicago, so I'm sure you're used to seeing a lot of construction cranes in the sky or construction buildings under use. And I'm one of those people that's my job site. That's my day job. That's what I go to every day. Chicago's got the second most tons in the country. Actually, there's so much construction going on, and whether you're driving around with your parents or going from one place to another, I'm sure you see a lot of construction. Some of the tallest cranes are over 1,000 feet that you see in the city are over 1,000 feet tall. That's 70 stories, 80 stories tall. They really get far up there. And there are crane operators that work up in those cranes, and their commute looks a lot different than someone driving to their work every day. I'm going to show you a picture of what their commute looks like. There are buildings downtown, there are buildings everywhere. This is a woman who's the crane operator. She climbs a ladder up and down 300 stories every day to sit in the top of the crane and lift material up and down for the construction workers to install in the building. And looking down that yellow crane, it's really high up. But she is really good at her job. She communicates with everyone on the ground using radios, and they tell her where she needs to go. They bring the cables down and hook them up to the material that needs to get lifted, and she brings them up. Now, cranes are built when they're low to the ground. Like you can see on this one to the left, it's built right next to that building. And what happens is the crane lifts itself up to get to the height that it needs to be. And so on the right side is a video showing you how it lifts itself. There's going to be a red piece that goes up and up, and then it locks into place, and then the guys go up to the top and they turn a switch, and the crane starts lifting itself further up. And then once it gets high enough, you'll see there's a section that they're going to slide into place, and then they do it all over again. It lifts itself up, slides a new section in, and keeps bringing itself up. And it does the opposite when they want to bring a crane back down. Now, there are other people that work on the project too. Once all the concrete is built, the windows have to go in on the outside. And there are guys that install men and women that install these very large windows, like you see on the right. And there's a person above who's radioing down to them, like the guy on the left, and says, all right, you've got it in line, and then they lock it into place. And that's how they install these very large windows that weigh hundreds of pounds. And all of these people, they are part of a union, different types of unions. So the crane operator is part of the operators union. The people who build the crane and get it higher, they're part of the iron workers union. These people right here, they're part of the glazers union. And to make sure everything fits, they talk to the construction managers, like I am, to make sure that the design is accurate and everything's been engineered accurately so that things get built where they're supposed to get built. And so we take a lot of measurements before we even start to make sure things fit. Inside of the concrete that we pour, you can see all this rebar and all the green wires. Those are cables that make sure the concrete is tight. You can see the silver conduit. Those are for electrical wires. The black pipes, those are for plumbing. All these things are designed and installed inside of the concrete. And the top right over there, you can see these guys are pouring concrete. And this is what's going to end up being, I think this was the 25th floor of a residential apartment tower that we were building. And so they pour the concrete and it encases all these things inside of the concrete slab. Well, that takes a lot of planning to make sure everything comes up in the right place. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you'll have pipes coming up in the middle of the room and you want it to come up where it's supposed to come up. And so we spend months and months talking with a design team to create a design that's going to work inside of the rooms. So this shows a plan where the blue shows the plumbing lines, the green shows the ductwork and heating and cooling. So everything that blows hot air and cold air to keep things the right temperature. The orange lines show the electrical, and the red lines show the fire alarm. And it takes a team of about 10 people, sometimes 20 people, to create the design over a couple months and make sure that when we go into the field and we start building it, things aren't running into each other and they're where they're supposed to be.
What software technology did you use to create that?
There's a lot of different software technologies, and they're coming out with different technology all the time. This one is called AutoCAD, which is a very common one. We've also got Navisworks and Revit, and I'll show you an example of this. Is a program called Navisworks. And so what they do is they put the building into a program that allow them to create a 3D model and basically design everything about it. And what it will eventually let you do when you want to put the electrical in the right place or the plumbing in the right place is you can bring it down and you can see every single one of the floors. And I'm going to take it all the way down to the first floor. And we'll zoom in down here. And we create a model of, this is one of the hotels that I built, and this is the restaurant that we put inside of it. And so you can see, everything that we put inside of there. This is the bar with the tables. The kitchen is over in this area. The entryway where the people walk in and meet the hostess is over here. But what's most important about this is below this, these are all the electrical lines and all the plumbing lines and the ductwork that run underneath the floor and pop up to allow the cook to get his stove in the right place and to allow the bartender to pour the soda pop and the beer and the wine, because all these things have to come up from the basement in the correct place. And so we spend a lot of time. I work with an electrician and a plumber and a fire sprinkler designer. I have a team of about 8 people that I use, and they all know their specialty very well, so we can design this thing. And it ends up being, it's a cool program to use, and you end up working with people and getting to know them very well to design everything and get it where it's supposed to be. So that's one of the programs that we use. It's called Navisworks, and it allows us to create a 3D model before we start building it in the field.
That is very cool, that the way you can see the upper layers and then go down to the basement.
Yeah. Now, once work actually starts in the field, we can also use it to document progress and kind of go back in time to see what was built. And another one of the pieces of technology that we use is, this is one called Hollow Builder. And the picture on the left is a picture from August of last year. And the picture on the right is a picture from just last month. And there's a camera that takes a 3D photo, and you can see So for example, we're looking at the elevator back in the day and at the elevator now, and you can see the difference there. And even though we've still got work still going on, um, if if the owner said, "Oh no, I forgot to install a telephone on this wall," I can say, "Oh, well, I can see what's in that wall from back in the day, and I can tell you what that looks like and how we can get one in." So that's one example. And this is another one where this is the bar that I was talking about, the restaurant that you saw in this program. So let's see. Oops. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. We designed this bar and everything, and now we can look at the pictures from the field. On the left is when we first started framing everything and putting in the stud walls and um, you know, doing all the demolition and rough construction. And the picture on the right is the finished product, and you can kind of see how everything aligns. Um, and then this is one other project, the old Cook County Hospital. You can see on the left how rough and old it was, and how much demolition needed to be done. And we restored all the plaster in the ceilings and built new walls and columns, and then repolished the floor to give it a new life. So these are some of the ways of technology that we use so that we can document what's happened in the past. We can provide a record to the people who say that this is a historical building. We can say, well, this is how it was built and renovated, and we can give something to the owner so if they ever want to make changes in the future, they can. So we also use technology in in the way that we work. So on the left side, there's a guy who's using a machine to demolish the old building so that we can build what needs to be done. And he wants to use that machine because if he's demolishing the floor, we don't want to put guys in danger or risk of the floor falling out from under them. So we use machines so that they can, the guy can be safe and we can get the work done. It also allows them, the machines are much stronger than humans, so we can use them to use pinpoint accuracy and a lot of power. On the right, while all the months of design is going on for the electrical and plumbing and everything, we start doing the excavation and putting in the basement for buildings so that we know, so we can get started ahead of time and get the building ready for when the design is finished. So we use technology for the design to make sure all the plumbing and electrical work together and with the structure. We use it for communication so that I can talk to the project owner, I can talk to the architect, I can talk to the engineer and the interior designer. We can all speak together, have conference calls, have video conferencing. I can take a video or take a picture and shoot it over to them with a question. And they can respond to me and know all of the information. So we use technology for that as well. And then we also use it, like I showed you, the 3D pictures for documentation and history so that if we ever need information in the future, we've got it. We also use, I started out in construction in tunneling actually. And right out of school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew is that I wanted to work construction, and I got hired by a tunneling company. So I was a couple 100 feet underground, and we were digging a tunnel to bring fresh water to people, but the tunnel was 12 foot wide, which is probably about the same size as your bedroom. So it was a hole in the ground about the same size as your bedroom. And there was concrete panels that got installed to hold the tunnel walls. And each of those panels weighs about the same as a car. And so to install it, they used equipment like this, lift them into place and put them where they're supposed to be. So he's using that remote control, that yellow remote box. He's using that to get it right location. Guys are telling them where it needs to be, they can install it. So this is another, it's a different kind of technology. It's not just technology on the computer, machinery and technology install large pieces of equipment and allow us to tunnel. Oops. So on the right, that's a still photo of the two guys that you saw in the video. And this is in the front of the tunnel boring machine. And tunnel boring machines, typically, they weigh about the same as, I don't know, a couple of semi trucks. And they're put on, as we dig the tunnel, we put down like train rails, and it drives itself on a locomotive to push itself forward and keep tunneling. On the left, we've got one of the other guys that I worked with in the most recent project I was working on, and he's he's coring a hole in the concrete floor to install a plumbing line. And that's where he uses technology a lot, so that when he's digging a hole in the floor, he doesn't run into a piece of rebar or a steel beam. So, these are people that I got to know while I was working on the job sites, and it's important to build those relationships, because all these people that I meet in the field, we rely on each other to communicate and to work safely so that no one gets hurt. Now, we all have different backgrounds and skills, but we all use math and science. We use technology and engineering in different ways. And so if you want to get into construction, it's a super fun field to be in, because you get to work on really cool projects. But you also get to meet good people. And if you want to be on the design side or the engineering side or the construction side, it takes all sorts of different skills and abilities. Some people can go straight into construction from high school. Some people, they go to college and get a little more learning, and some people go to college for a long time. I started out as a carpenter, and then I went to college so I could become a manager. But there's most of the people that I work with right out of high school, they end up joining one of the unions, and they get a job working as an apprentice with the union, and the union teaches them what they need to know while they pay them. So they're getting paid well while they're learning, and they get a job that they can be proud of, and that it gives them a job that they can be proud of and provide for their family and their friends as they get older and further into their career. So these are all just friends that I made while I was working on the different projects. These are different tunnelers that I worked with. So if you're interested in construction or engineering or design or being an architect or anything like that, you can start out by talking to, there's some schools that you can go to after high school. There are some colleges, but if you're interested, you can also talk to, Google unions, local trade unions. There are operators, there are laborers. The operators are the people like the crane operator, or people who use backhoes. On the right, Jermaine, he's a laborer and ended up going into tunneling. The guy on the left here, he's a plumber. And so there's welders and there's electricians, there's tile setters and there's painters. There's all sorts of options. So if you have any interest, usually there's something you can find that would allow you to get a good job, make some good money, and work on some cool projects.
That sounds good. I wanted to give the teachers who joined the stream a chance to, if they have any questions. I know you covered a lot of like how you became in the construction field and what you did to prepare, but I think there might be one or two questions. I just want to give them a minute.
Yeah, please.
Hi, thank you for coming and speaking with us today. I just have a question about what goes in those tunnels that you make. Maybe you answered that before I came in.
They've got tunnels from everything, from the dirtiest toilets need to go somewhere to the cleanest of how to supply fresh water. The tunnel that I showed you, that was to bring fresh water, the water that comes out of your kitchen sink. That's what brings water into everybody's communities and everybody's homes. But they're subway tunnels like you ride on the L, and they're car tunnels like when you're driving on the highway and you go through downtown, you go through some tunnels. So, yeah.
Thank you. One of the other questions that students were thinking about today was, when you were younger, did you know that this was the job that you were going to have?
Yeah. I always knew I wanted to do construction. I didn't know what kind of construction, and I didn't know how to get into it. But I started out just working random carpentry jobs for my friends and for my parents' friends, and learning as I go. And then I realized I wanted to get more into it, so I went to college to learn construction management. But
Thank you.
it started when I was young. So when I was young, my sister was born, and it was the hottest summer on record in Milwaukee. And so my mom would take us to the library because we didn't have air conditioning in our house because the library had AC. And so I'd spend all day there looking at reading books and on the computer. And then we'd stop at the corner store and get a box of popsicles and then sit on my neighbor's steps. And they were building an apartment building next to my parents' house. And so she'd just sit us down and I'd watch them build the apartment building while I was eating popsicles.
Nice, and that determined your future. Crazy. Yeah. One of the other questions students had was, what does your job allow you to do?
Well, my job allowed me to travel for a while when I was traveling around with different construction companies. I worked in DC and Los Angeles. I worked in Houston and Milwaukee, and then I came to Chicago. But it also allowed me to work on different kinds of construction. So I worked on the tunneling. I worked building hospitals. I built an apartment building. And now I'm working downtown in Chicago on the Chicago Tribune building, which is the old newspaper building, and they're turning it into condominiums. And in addition to just the work, I've also gotten to meet some really, really cool people and make, lifelong friends.
Awesome, thank you. The last question that students had brainstormed today was, how do you face barriers or challenges that come up, either in accomplishing the job that you're working on or achieving the goals that you have for yourself professionally?
Every day has lots of different challenges. Most of the daily challenges arise with, oh, this pipe is in the wrong place, or, oh, we were tunneling and we ran into, a steel beam that wasn't supposed to be there. But more in regards to like my career, when I first started out, yeah, honestly, construction is a field where it's a lot of old white guys. That's what it used to be. And so they didn't listen to younger people, and they didn't listen to people of different colors a lot of times. But that's been changing a lot. Now I walk around on my construction site and I see people of all backgrounds and shapes and colors and genders. And I think that's created a lot more open-minded job site. But that doesn't mean that there's still not challenges and a lot of steps that we need to go through to make sure it's more accessible for everybody. And so that's why it's becoming more equal in terms of Blacks and Hispanics and women in the trades. But there's a lot of opportunities and chances, and we want to make it so that the construction field looks more like the communities that we're working. So if people are afraid of coming into construction, I'd say reach out, and I'm happy to help get you in touch with apprentice programs and people that would give you a chance to get into these fields, because it's the barriers are not as high as they used to be, but I want to provide a chance for everyone to get in if they want to.
So as when they turn, let's say 16, they could seek out some kind of apprenticeship or some kind of like summer job even in construction, right? I mean, you hire young people before they become part of the union, right? Or is it just, are they usually over 18?
Usually they're over 18.
Okay.
The unions, the way you start getting into the union is that you apply for an apprenticeship program, and then they bring you on and they give you classes, and they pair you with people who have been doing it for a long time to teach you what you need to know. But it's not like college in that you're paying college to teach you those things. You're working. And so whether you're someone who's installing bathroom tile, or if you're someone who's welding in a large apartment building, a skyscraper, you have someone teaching you, and you're getting paid, and you're learning what you need to become an experienced journeyman. But yeah, typically those don't start until you're 18.
Awesome. Thank you. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. I think you answered so many of their questions before. Ms. Chambers might have a question.
Yes, I have a question. And hello, and thank you for joining us. You just mentioned information about girls, and that was one of the questions that was brought up. What can girls do now to get into this field? And another question, a student wanted to know, what's the hardest part of your job?
Well, I'd start with, if girls want to get into construction, honestly, right now it's the same as guys. I would reach out to, if you're interested in being an electrician or a carpenter, or if you want to operate, some of the big machinery that you see, like that picture I showed you, the crane operator that we had at that apartment building in Hyde Park. She was one of the best operators I've ever worked with, and she's part of the operators union. So there's a couple of resources. I would either reach out to some of the union, whatever union you're interested in, but then there's also a general group called Chicago Women in the Trades, and they support all women no matter what union they want to be in. They'll get you connected with the resources you need, or if you have questions, they provide mentorships, they provide resources, they answer questions to support seeing more women in the field. So that group is called the Chicago Women in Trades.
Thank you.
The hardest thing is, sometimes when you start your day, and I'm sure all you teachers know what I'm talking about, you start your day with a game plan and in your mind of what you want to do, and then something comes up and you've got to deal with whatever comes up. And so the hardest thing is just staying flexible and dealing with whatever issues come up on a day-to-day basis, and trying to keep keep the keep your priorities. So make sure that you know that even though these things, main goal is to build the project, or teachers, your main goal is to teach this lesson plan, even though you're dealing with a lot of the smaller issues.
Thank you.
So,
Quinn, hi, how are you today? Thank you for joining us. Quinn, my class had one question. We really started talking deep about the Sears Tower, the Willis Tower, and how much preparation really goes into a project that massive, and how many other people are coming together to work on a type of project like that.
years of preparation. Yeah, back in the day, it was less preparation, just because they didn't have the electrical and heating and cooling systems that we do now. So right now we're putting more and more inside of buildings. But from the beginning of design with the architect to starting construction, depending on the size of building, it can be 6 months to 3 years sometimes. And right now on the Chicago Tribune apartment building that I'm working on now, we have almost 400 people working on it every single day. And it's 35 stories, and we've got stonemasons on the outside relaying the stone. We've got bricklayers inside building the brick. We've got electricians. We've got all these different people working together. And from my point of view, I help coordinate and manage them so they're not all trying to work in the same place. And we've got a schedule that we follow. This schedule, I think the Sears Tower ended up being built in a year and a half, almost 2 years. This Chicago Tribune building, it's taking about 3 years, because we're taking an old structure, demolishing it down so it's empty on the inside, and building everything back in. So if you get a job on one of these projects, you're set for quite a long time. But then sometimes if you get on smaller projects, it'll just be a couple months here, a couple months there, and then you move on to the next one, which from my point of view, I think it's really cool because I get to see a lot of different projects.
Nice. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. The kids are really interested in building, from our youngest kids all the way up to 8th graders. And I think that you really inspired them. And I really appreciate your time and your energy and your excitement about the job. And hopefully it trickles over to our students.
Yes, thank you. I actually have one more question that just popped in. What's the longest project that you personally have worked on?
My longest project was that big tunnel project in Los Angeles. So that was a big tunnel for fresh water to bring it from the north side of the city down to the south side of the city. And that took 2 years. We did a 2-mile long tunnel. And when you think about it, it's not very far each day. It was probably only about 20 feet each day. But it takes a long time to go through bedrock, because every day you come to the job site and then you go down the hole into the shaft, and then you walk into the tunnel, and each day your walk into the tunnel gets longer and longer. But that was the longest project I worked on. I do want to show you one other pic, if I can figure out how to share my screen again. I want to show you a project that they just asked me to look at, because they want to potentially build a new hotel downtown, and it's the old People's Gas building. So this is the rooftop of it, and it's right on Michigan Avenue. And inside of each of those, you see the horizontal sticks right there? They want to put a bar and restaurant on the roof of this building. And then they want to put wading pools inside each of those so that people can swim around on the roof and have a drink and have their dinner, which I think is a very creative idea. But in the basement of it, they used to collect all the money from people paying their bills and store it inside of this old vault. And this is probably 50 feet underground, and it's got walls that are 2 feet thick of concrete with a couple inches of solid steel on the inside of it. And then you can see how insanely amazing this vault door is. It's almost out of a movie or a picture. And they want to put a speakeasy bar inside of that vault. So it's a project that I think is really interesting, and I'm really excited, and I hope I get to work on it in the future.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. I think we're going to close it off and just really thank you so much. If the kids have any other questions, we'll forward them off to you, but we really appreciate your time and your willingness to share with our students today.
Yeah, thank you. And if any students are curious about going into construction or the trades, or want to know more about, what it means to be a designer, architect, or interior designer, let me know, and I'm happy to connect them to whoever they need to be, whoever they need to get where they need to be.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you again.
Yeah, anytime. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.